Okay, content ideas. So I'm going to drop 3 ideas here for content which I believe everyone in this room should consider creating, okay? And again, going back to this idea of taking a common sense approach to content, number 1 is you don't need to spend massive amounts of dollars on content, okay? There are some smart ways to do it efficiently and effectively, and I'll share those with you at the end, near the end of the presentation. How many of you know what evergreen content is? So evergreen content is content that, regardless of the date or time, you can use it over and over and over again. So it's content that can be constantly repurposed, right? You should find content that you can actually repurpose. And we'll talk about some of the data that you have available that you can leverage to kind of build your first base of content off of. The next kind of common sense approach here is that you've got to think about segmentation, right? Segmentation is all about delivering the right message to the right person at the right time. A lot of times what I see is people mix together their mailing lists. They just have one giant master mailing list in their CRM. And I think that's a huge mistake because you're sending messaging that might be targeted to someone who's looking to sell, to someone who might be looking to buy. And that's a really bad experience. It's a non-segmented way of approaching your customers. And that's really the shotgun approach, right? What you want to do is you want to be able to segment all of your contacts into specific lists and then deliver the right marketing message to each of those folks. And last but certainly not least, just keep this in mind, is get help. Don't do it by yourself. There's plenty of experts out there that can help you do it faster, cheaper, and better, okay? So the first piece of content that I think everyone should create is what I call a Launchpad website. How many of you have your own branded website? Great. So if you don't have your own branded website yet, or you're thinking about a potential redesign for your website, one thing you want to think about is you want to develop what we call sort of a minimum viable product, or an MVP, right? How many of you have heard that term out there? A minimum viable product, or an MVP. So what it is basically building something that allows you to get just enough data to figure out how to take the next iteration of your product or service. And what that means with a website is, when we call it a Launchpad site, is that we want you to build a basic website. You don't have to go out and spend $10,000 to $20,000 on a website, right? There's great platforms out there, Squarespace, Wix, and there's developers for those platforms as well that reduce the cost to build a beautiful website. Make sure that you use your personal branding on this website, right? Because you want to be able to take your brand with you wherever you go. No matter what brokerage you work with, whoever you're working for, you want to be able to take your brand with you. You want your website because you want it to be a home base for your content, okay? When you start blogging, when you start developing what we call lead magnets, which we'll talk about in a second, you want to have a place for people to go and download that and have your personal brand there. As you all know, photography and rich media is really important to captivating people, and especially today when everyone has a fast internet connection, you can use very visually stunning photography, and we all know that photography is important, and the copy just needs to be simple. You don't need to write paragraphs on the site, right? And a few key pages to think about are have a home page with some sort of call to action, have an about page that talks about you and your team. A lot of agents I see have sort of a featured homes area of their site, which they can connect into MLS. Put content up there, obviously, and we'll continue to talk about contact, and obviously have a contact page. So I actually found, I was looking around for websites, and this is actually a really good example, and I'm actually more interested in the navigation of this website. So as you can see here, there's a Meet Our Team, a featured homes, and a market update. Pretty standard, right? But now look how this navigation is segmented. It's segmented into buyers and to sellers. It's giving content that's relevant to buyers and content that's relevant to sellers. And most importantly, it's talking about the community this agent is in, okay? Who knows what lead magnets are? Great. So what a lead magnet is, it's a piece of content that is an offer that's valuable enough to entice someone to opt in. And this is where the inbound relationship all starts. If they come to you, they voluntarily give you your email address so that they can get a piece of content. And what happens there, there's a transaction that happens there, right? They give you the keys to their inbox, and in exchange for that, you give them a piece of content. But them downloading that content also gives you a little bit of intelligence about that person, right? What are their motivations? Are they a buyer or are they a seller, right? Are they a looker or are they actually serious at looking at property? So the type of content you produce as a lead magnet and will actually tell you a little bit about that potential customer after they've opted in. Lead magnets require a little bit of technology, so you need to have a landing page and a way to deliver the lead magnet to the person after they've opted in. It requires a little bit of copy and a little bit of design work, right? And that's where you probably want to bring in an expert to help you write the lead magnet. They're typically about 1,000 to 2,000 words. And you also want to have a great designer because you're going to probably interlace a lot of really interesting pictures and photographs in there. So you want someone who's really good at graphic design, who can work in Photoshop, Illustrator, any of those types of tools. Lead magnets are a great way to drive inbound relationships with cold leads. So if anyone ever does any advertising, a great way to make sure that you just don't drop them on your homepage because they won't really know where to go from there. Another way to do this is to actually get them onto a landing page with a lead magnet and to try and drive a conversion to get them to opt into your website, right? So it's a great way to start a relationship with someone online who you might not be able to touch, whether it's through your community or through your network, and this is what we really call cold leads, right? It's also a great way to re-engage previous clients, right? So if you've come up with an interesting lead magnet and you think it'd be really helpful for some of your previous clients to take a look at, email that out to them. Let them know that it's available. It keeps you top of mind with them in a helpful and sort of useful way, right? So some keys to great lead magnets. One is aggregated and summarized data, and we talked, in our previous presentation, a lot of what we talked about over the past day is about data, right? People love data. They love to download it. A lot of them don't like to read it, but the point here is that you're positioning yourself as an expert and someone who understands, that market, that particular community. The content should position yourself as a local expert, right? So in the city, so like a pricing guide, for West Palm Beach or Palm Beach. The neighborhoods that you specialize in. So in LA, yoga is a really big thing, so top yoga studios in LA. And you should also leverage your own connections as a resource in your community. And that's one thing I really find as I've known agents over the years is that you are the connectors of your community, right? You have that relationship with that top-notch GC or the administrator of that really hard to get into private school. And those are relationships that you should leverage and try to aggregate into a single piece of content that you can send to people to let them know, hey, if you're new to this area, here's all the resources that I can provide to you, right? So make sure you leverage your own connections because they're very valuable and they'll be very useful to folks who are out there looking for that kind of help, all right? One thing I wanted to note was that, there's a lot of work that goes into producing the market reports, right? And there's some really good data in those reports. And when I talked about repurposing content and not having to reinvent the wheel, I'd recommend that you take your local report and find a way to put that report in your own voice. And these bullet points here are all great data, but how do you take those bullet points and start to tell a story to your clients, to your prospective clients? So leverage content that you already have and repurpose that content, okay? Email newsletters. How many of you have an email newsletter that goes out regularly? Great. So email newsletters are not only great for nurturing new leads, but they're also great for nurturing previous clients. How many of you have an email newsletter that goes out to people who've closed with you? Or Great. And just curious, why do you send that email newsletter to your clients?
Stay in touch with them in a regular way.
Yeah, better than sending a birthday card or whatever once a year. You can stay in touch with them once a month or whatever, right? Yeah, so it's a great way to nurture previous clients. And I remember when I bought my first home in 2007, we worked with a realtor. We ended up selling that home about 3 or 4 years later. I never heard from that realtor again, right? And then the person that I co-owned the house with, he actually ended up buying a house 8 months after we sold that home. Ended up looking for another realtor, and I don't know why she didn't reach out to us, right? But the fact of the matter is that if she continued to email us, stay top of mind, he probably would have reached out to her again, right, when he was looking to buy a new home. So stay top of mind with your previous clients because you've worked really hard to get that client, and there's lifetime value to be achieved out of getting that single client, right? So stay top of mind with them by using an email newsletter. It's the easiest content format to execute on your own, right? And it requires very little technology investment. There's so many out-of-the-box softwares like MailChimp, Constant Contact, you've probably heard of them, that are quasi-CRMs that allow you to do really good email marketing. And the great thing about these tools is that they actually allow you to segment your contacts like I spoke about earlier. So you can have one contact list for one email newsletter or a contact list that you may want to send only specific content to. Now, some keys to really good email newsletters. If you have a blog, use your email letter as a distribution channel for your blog content. A lot of people aren't just going to your website every day to type in and look at your latest blog post. You've got to push that information over to them, right? So if they've opted into your email newsletter, just redistribute your blog content so you can get people back onto your site, reading your blog content, re-engaging with you. If you don't have a blog, my best recommendation for you is to find great content from around the internet, curate it for your email subscribers, and send it to them through an email newsletter. You know, the Institute is also focused on producing more blog content that's maybe a little more steered towards the consumer. So you could also leverage some of the blog content from the Institute, right? But if you found that really cool Wall Street Journal article or whatever the case was, curate that content for your email lists and send it out to them. Again, you're trying to be helpful and resourceful for them. I mentioned this many times, but make sure you segment your contacts. You know, you might want to have, you know, a buyer's list, a potential buyer's list. You might want to have a seller's list. You might want to have a move-up list, right? And a lot of times when we don't segment our contacts, what that translates into is really poor open rates and really poor click-through rates. You'll be shocked at what happens when you start to segment people out. You start to see double and triple increases in open rates and click-through rates. And last but not least is keep email design simple. Now, this is an email that I get every day. It's a B2B email, but I wanted to make this point here. This is the worst designed email in the world. It's a giant block of text. There's 5 pages of this, okay? It's a mortgage newsletter that I get every single day from a guy named Rob Chrisman. Here's the thing. He has 55,000 email subscribers and a 40% open rate. That means about 20,000 people are opening his emails every single day. That's enormous, right? So here's the thing. You probably can't even read the content on there because it's so damn small, but it's fantastic content if you're in the mortgage industry. If you're in capital markets, if you are a broker, if you're in retail, if you're in wholesale, everything is in here for you. So the point here is that we're actually kind of moving away from doing really sexy, really designed emails. And we're actually starting to see that emails that are more plain text, that come from a real person instead of marketing@tobyagency.co, those are actually driving much higher open rates and much higher engagement. So don't waste too much time on email design, okay?